the mountainside in a wild and lonely spot. No other dwelling for 3 miles around except her own father's cot. On many a dreary winter night, young swains would gather there, for father kept a social board, and she was very fair. Her father liked to see her dressed as fine as a city belle, for she was the only child that he had, and he loved his daughter well. It was New Year's Eve, the sun had set. Why looks her anxious eye so long from the frosty winters forth as the merry sleighs pass by? But at the village inn, 15 miles away, there's a merry ball tonight. Though the piercing wind is as cold as death, her heart is warm and light. But how laughs her dreamy eyes as a well-known voice she hears, and dashing up to the cottage door, young Charles with sleigh appears. Oh, daughter dear, her mother said, this blanket around you fold, for it's a dreadful night abroad, and you'll take your death of cold. Nay, mother, nay, fair Charlotte said, and she laughed like a gypsy queen, to ride in blankets all muffled up, I never shall be seen. I have my silken cloak, it's quite enough, it's lined throughout, you know, and then I have my silken scarf around my neck I'll throw. Her gloves were on, her bonnet tied, she jumps into the sleigh, and away they go by the mountainside and o'er the hills away. There's life in the sound of the merry bells as o'er the hills they go. What a creaking noise the runners make as they cleave the frozen snow. Oh, see, said Charles, how fast the frost is gathering on my brow, when Charlotte in a feeble voice said, I'm growing warmer now. He popped his whip, he urged his steeds more swiftly than before, until 5 more dreary miles in silence they passed o'er. Oh, see, said Charles, how fast the frost pissed down. With muffled faces silently, 5 long miles they passed, till Charles in these frozen tones the silence broke at last. He popped his whip, he urged his steeds more swiftly than before, until 5 more dreary miles in silence they passed o'er. And on they rode through the frosty air and the glittering cold starlight, until at last the village inn and the ballroom were inside. They reached the end, and Charles jumped out and held his arms to her. Why sit you there like a monument that has no power to stir? He called her once, he called her twice, she answered not a word. He called her by her name again, but still she never stirred. He took her hand in his, oh God, 'twas cold and hard as stone. He tore the mantle from her brow, and on her the cold star shone. And then into the lighted hall her lifeless form he bore, for Charlotte was a frozen corpse, and words spoke nevermore. He sat himself down by her side, and the bitter tears did flow. He said, my young intended bride, I never more shall know. He threw his arms around her neck, he kissed her marble brow, and his thoughts went back to where she said, I'm growing warmer now. He bore her out unto the sleigh, and with her drove home. And when he reached the cottage door, oh, how her parents mourned. They mourned the loss of their daughter dear, and Charles mourned o'er their gloom, until the grief his heart did break, and he slumber in one tomb. Oh, the judge says, stand up, boy, and dry up your tears. You're sentenced to Nashville for 21 years. So kiss me goodbye, babe, and say you'll be mine. For 21 years, boys, is a mighty long time. I hear the train blowing, it'll be here on time to take me to Nashville to serve out my time. The steam from the whistle, the smoke from the stack, I know you'll be true blue until I get back. So hold up your head, babe, and dry up your eyes. The best friends have to part, babe, and so must you and I. 6 months have gone by, babe, I wish I was dead. This lousy old jailhouse, a floor for a bed. It's raining, it's hailing, the moon gives no light. Oh, darling, please tell me why you never write. I've counted the days, babe, I've counted the nights, I've counted the minutes, I've counted the lights, I've counted every footstep, I've counted the stars, I've counted a million of these prison bars. I counted on you, babe, to give me a break. I guess you forgot that I'm here for your sake. For you know who's guilty, you know it too well, but I'll rot in this jailhouse before I will tell. It's come all you brave fellows with hearts brave and true. Don't trust any woman, you're beat if you do. Don't trust any woman, no matter what kind. For 21 years, boys, is a mighty long time. Oh, it's come here, my story of heartaches and sighs. I'm a prisoner who's lonely for his moonlight and skies. I have a sweetheart who's waiting for me back in old Oklahoma, not far from Shawnee. Her lips are like the cherries, her little heart cries, Daddy, don't leave me, your moonlight and skies. My pal's name was Blackie, a lad with true heart. A robbery we planned, then decided to start. I went to my darling with tears in her eyes. She says, Daddy, don't leave me, your moonlight and skies. But I laughed at her pleading, youth must have its way, and the soul told her I'd be back in a couple of days. But the next scene was fatal, with a shot through his heart. Poor Blackie died sending love to his sweetheart. I go tell her I love her, and I'm sending my love, and I'll meet her in heaven with the angels above. That night I was captured out under the stars. Now I have life to linger behind these iron bars. A pale moon is shining so bright, and the lovers go strolling by my window tonight. Their laughter so merry brings heartaches and sighs to a prisoner who's lonely for his moonlight and skies. Let me see now. Oh, how many times have you heard people say, if I had his money, I'd do things my way. But little they know, it's so hard to find one rich man in 10 with a satisfied mind. Once I was rolling in fortune and fame, everything that I longed for seemed to come my way, but suddenly it happened, I lost every dime, but I'm richer by far, with a satisfied mind. Money can't buy back your youth when you're old, or a friend when you're lonesome, or a love that's grown cold. So the wealthiest person is a pauper at times, compared with the man with a satisfied mind. When my life is over, my time has run out, my friends and my loved ones, I'll leave them no doubt. There's one thing for certain, when it comes my time, I'll leave this old world with a satisfied mind. We'll shoot Dan McGrew. A bunch of us boys hoovered 'em up in a Malamute saloon, while a kid that tickled the music box picked up a jag-time tune. In the back of the bar in the solo game sat dangerous Dan McGrew, and watching his luck was his light of love, the lady known as Lou. One hour of the night, which is 50 below, and two, the din of the glare. Some of the miner fresh from the creeks, dog dirty and loaded for bear. He looked like a man with one foot in the grave, while he had scarcely the strength of a louse, though he opened up a bag of gold dust on the bar and called for the drinks of the house. No one could place the stranger's face, though we searched ourselves for a clue, but we drank to his health, and the last to drink was dangerous Dan McGrew. There are men who just somehow grip your eyes and hold him like a spell, and such was he, and he looked to me like a man who had lived in hell, with a face most hair and a glassy stare of a dog whose day is done, and he watered the green stuff in his glass, and the drops went down one by one. Then I got to watching him and wondering what he'd do. and turned my head, and watching him was a lady known as Lou. And his eyes went wandering around the room as if in kind of a daze, till at last the old piano fell in waves, wondering gaze. The ragtime kid was having a drink, and there's no one left on the stool. And the stranger, he stumbled across the room and flopped down there like a fool. With his buckskin shirt all glazed in dirt, he sat and I saw him sway. And he clutched the keys with his taloned hands. My God, but that man could play. Was you ever out in the great alone when the moon was awful clear, and the icy mountains hemmed you in with the silence you most could hear? With the lonely howl of a timber wolf when you camped there in the cold, a half-dead thing in this stark dead world, clean mad for the muck called gold. and you've a hunch what the music meant, hunger not in the night in the stars, hungry not of the belly kind that's banished with bacon and beans, but the gnawing hunger of lonely men for a home and all that it means. A far side far from the cares that are, four walls and a roof above, and oh so crammed full of cozy joy and crowned with a woman's love. A woman that's dearer than all the world, and true as heaven is true. God, how ghastly she looked through her rouge, the lady known as Lou. And the music almost died away, then bounced with a pent-up flood. And it seemed to say, repay, repay, and my eyes went blind with blood. And the thought come back of an ancient wrong, and it stung like a frozen lash, and the lust awoke to kill, and the music stopped with a crash. And the stranger he turned, and his eyes they burned in the most peculiar way. With his buckskin shirt all glazed in dirt, he sat and I saw him sway. And his lips went in a kind of a grin, and he spoke, and his words were calm. Boys, says he, you don't know me, and none of you give a damn. But I wish to state my words are straight, and I bet my poke they're true. There's a man in his house that's a hound of hell, and that man is Dan McGrew. I ducked my head, and the lights went out, 2 shots rang out in the dark, and a woman screamed, and the lights went on. 2 bodies lay stiff and stark, and pitched on his head with pump full of lead lay dangerous Dan McGrew, while a man from the creeks lay clutched to the breast of the lady known as Lou. These are the simple facts of the case, and I guess I ought to know. They say that the stranger was crazed with hooch, but I'm not denying it so. I'm not so wise as these lawyer guys, but strictly between us two. The one that kissed him and pinched his poke was the lady known as Lou. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who toil for gold, and the Arctic trails have their secret tales that make your blood run cold. And the northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake Labarge where I cremated Sam McCree. Yes, Sam McCree was from Tennessee where the cotton blooms and blows. Why he left his home to roam around the pole nobody knows. He was always cold, but the land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell. He'd often say in his homely way that he'd sooner live in hell. On a Christmas day we was mushing away over the Dawson Trail. Took off your coal to a parka fold, it stabbed like a driven nail. If our eyes would close, the lashes froze, till sometimes we couldn't see. It wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McCree. And that very night as he lay packed tight in the robes beneath the snow, and the dogs were fed and the stars overhead were dancing heel and toe, he turned to me and Cap says he, I'll cash in this trip I guess, and if I do, I'm asking you not to refuse my last request. Well, he seemed so low that I couldn't say no, and he said with sort of a moan, it's a cursed cold that's got right hold, till I'm chilled clean through to the bone. It ain't being dead's my awful dread, it's the icy grave that pains, and I want you to swear, though foul or fair, you'll cremate my last remains. Well, a pal's last need is a thing to heed, and they swore they would not fail. We started on at the streaks of dawn, but God, he looked ghostly pale. He crouched on the sleigh and he raved all day of his home in Tennessee. And before nightfall, the corpse was all that was left of Sam McCree. There wasn't a breath in the land of death, and I hurried horror-driven with a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid because of a promise given. He was lashed to the sleigh and it seemed to say, you may tax your bronze and brains, but you promised true, it's up to you to cremate my last remains. Well, a promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail had its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were dumb, in my heart how I cursed that load. In the long, long night by the lone firelight, while the huskies round in the ring howled out their woes to the homeless snows, oh God, how I loathed this thing. And every day that quiet clay seemed to heavier and heavier grow. But on I went till the dogs were spent and the grub was getting low. The trail was bad and I felt half mad, but I swore would not give in, and it often signed to the hateful thing, and it hearkened with a grin. Till we reached the marge of Lake Labarge, and a deerlick there lay, and it's jammed in the ice and saw it thrice, it was called the Alice May. Then I looked at it and I thought a bit, then I looked at my frozen chum. Then here said I with a sudden cry, is my crematorium. Some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found lying around, and I heaped the fuel up higher. The flames it soared and the furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom see. And I burned a hole in the glowing coals, and I stuffed in Sam McCree. Then I made a hike, for I didn't like to hear him sizzle so. The heavens scowled and the huskies howled, and the wind began to blow. It was icy cold, but the hot sweat rolled down my cheeks, but I don't know why. And a greasy smoke and an inky cloak went streaking down the sky. I don't know how long I stood out in the snow with grisly fear, but the stars come out and danced about. Here again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, I'll just take a peep inside. I guess he's cooked, and it's time I looked, and the door opened wide. And there sat Sam, looking cool and calm, in the heart of the furnace roar. He wore a smile you could see a mile, and he says, please close that door. It's fine in here, but I greatly fear you let in the cold and storm. Since I left Plumtree down in Tennessee, it's the first time I've been warm. Two drummers, they were seated in a grand hotel one day. While dining they were chatting in a jovial sort of way. There came a pretty waitress to bring a tray of food. They spoke to her familiarly in a manner rather rude. At first she did not notice or make the least reply, but one remark was said to her, brought teardrops to her eyes. She turned on her tormentor, her face was blushing red, approaching as a picture, and this is what she said. My mother was a lady, like yours you would avow, and you may have a sister who needs protection now. I came to this great city to find my brother dear, and you wouldn't dare insult me, sir, if Brother Jack were here. The two sat there in silence, their head hung down in shame. Forgive me, miss, we meant no harm. Please tell me what's your name. She told him and he cried aloud, I know your brother too. We've been friends for many, many years, and he often speaks of you. Come go with me when I go back, and if you'll only wed, I'll take you to him as my bride, for I love you since you said. My mother was a lady, and yours you would allow, and you may have a sister who needs protection now. I came to this great city to find my brother dear. And you wouldn't dare insult me, sir, if Brother Jack were here. I was hanging around town, just spending my time, out of a job and not making a dime, when up stepped a stranger and said, I suppose you're a bronc riding man from the look of your clothes. Well, he guesses me right, and I tells him the same. Asked if he happened to have any bad ones to tame. He said he had one that was a bad one to buck, and throwing good cowboys he had lots of luck. He said this old pony has never been rode, and the guy that gets on him is bound to get throwed. Well, he got me all excited, and asked what he'd pay to ride this old pony for a couple of days. He offered me a 10-spot and says, I'm your man. That bronc never lived that I couldn't fan. That bronc never lived nor never drew breath that I couldn't ride till he starved plumb to death. He said, get your saddle and I'll give you a chance. And we gets in the buckboard and drives to the ranch. Early next morning, right after Chuck, I goes out to see if this outlaw could buck. Down in the horse corral, standing alone, to this old caballo, a strawberry roan. He's got little pin ears that touch at the tip, big 44 brand upon his left hip. His legs are all spavin, and he's got pigeon toes, little pig eyes and a big Roman nose, a short upper lip and a long lower jaw. You can see with one eye he's a regular outlaw. Well, I pulled down my hat, yes, I'm sure feeling fine. I put on the spurs and I coiled up my twine. I throwed my loop on him and I knew right then, before I had rode him, I'd shored my 10. I gets the blinds on him, it sure is a fight. Next comes my saddle and I screws it down tight. And I stepped right up on him and raises the blinds. And I'm setting in his middle to watch him unwind. Well, he bowed his old neck, and I guess he unwound, for he seemed to quit living down there on the ground. He goes up in the east and comes down in the west. To stay in his middle, I'm doing my best. He's about the best bucker I've seen on the range. He can turn on a nickel and give you some change. And he turned his old belly right up to the sun, for he is a sun-fishing son of a gun. And I lose one stirrup and also my hat, and I start pulling leather as blind as a bat. He makes one more jump and goes up on high, and leaves me a settin' way up in the sky. I turned over twice and I come back to earth, and I let in to cuss in the day of his birth. Now here's one old pony that I couldn't ride. The old devil's still living if he hasn't died. And I bet all my money that man ain't alive and ride old Strawberry when he makes that high dive. Roly-poly, eating corn and taters, hungry every minute of the day. Roly-poly, gnawing on a biscuit, long as he can chew it, it's okay. He could eat an apple pie and never even bat an eye. He likes everything from soup to hay. Oh, roly-poly, daddy's little fatty, bet he's gonna be a man someday. Roly-poly, scrambled eggs for breakfast, bread and jelly 20 times a day. Roly-poly, eat a hearty dinner. It takes lots of strength to run and play. He pulls up weeds and he does the chores, and he runs both ways to all the stores. He works up an appetite that way. Oh, roly-poly, daddy's little fatty, bet he's gonna be a man someday. Roly-poly, scrambled eggs for breakfast, bread and jelly 20 times a day. Roly-poly, gnawing on a biscuit, Long as he can chew it, it's okay. He could eat an apple pie and never even bat an eye. He likes everything from soup to hay. Oh, roly-poly, Daddy's little fatty. Bet he's gonna be a man someday. Okay, that's one. I am a roving gambler. I gamble down in town. Whenever I meet with a deck of cards, I'll lie my money down. I hadn't been in Washington many more weeks than 3 when I fell in love with a pretty little girl, and she fell in love with me. She took me in her parlor and she cooled me with her fan. She whispered low in her mother's ear, I love this gambling man. Oh daughter, oh dear daughter, what makes you do me so? To leave your dear old mother and with this gambler go. Oh daughter, oh mother, oh dear mother, I know I love you well, but the love I have for the gambling man, no human's tongue could tell. I've gambled blowing and straining every nerve. Oh dear mother.